welcome to Camp Re-Education, where every week we take our favorite stories from the internet and force our guests to take a stand. I'm your host, Ian, and joining me as always is our sentient Adopt-A-Highway, Shaye, joined also by today's guest, Eric, who runs a nonprofit whose goal it is to put bullying back at our schools where it belongs. Also joining us, returning as a guest, is Craig, who is the chairman of the committee to make endangered migratory butterflies sentient so we can torture them. Eric, Craig, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's our pleasure. I'm speaking for Craig.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I guess Eric's going to think it's nice to be here for the first time.
Well, we'll see about that, because my first question today, just to get things started, is cats and dogs. You can only choose one of them to keep alive. The rest you need to euthanize in their entirety. Which do you choose?
To euthanize or to keep alive?
Your dealer's choice.
I'm keeping cats. I'm euthanizing dogs.
I gotta agree here with Eric. I mean, I prefer dogs, but I'm not going around euthanizing a bunch of cats. Fuck that. I want to make it home safe.
I was thinking this was going to become like a government program. Like, I wasn't suggesting that, like, I give you a gun and you personally go around killing every single dog in America.
I was envisioning it was more like a COVID situation where we, in a laboratory, manufacture a virus that targets a specific species, cats or dogs.
Yeah, because logistically, the manual euthanasia of cats, as Greg suggested, would be a major challenge. We don't even know how many of them there are.
You're driven purely, so this is like completely objective for you. Like, you're just like, I'm going with like the logistically easiest thing to do. Like,
it's also for me motivated by the fact that I prefer cats over dogs, just because they're less work. But also, I have personal professional experience in euthanizing both dogs and cats, and also trying to control dog and cat populations. And so
what I'm imagining here, Eric,
the
is
logistics are also a very important consideration here.
What I'm imagining, Eric, is you find the fact that dogs experience more emotion more satisfying to when you can see the life slowly fade out of their eyes.
I think that it's interesting that you enjoy believing that about me, and I'd be curious to talk a little bit more about why that is.
That'll be in our follow-up episode where we dive deep into the history that is Eric and Shaye.
and their apparent, that wasn't that your guys' first date? Was you just like killed a couple of dogs and cats together?
Eric's like,
Eric turning to Shaye, you're going to love this, I promise.
It's like, if you ever need to kill a cat in a pinch, here's some simple at-home tricks you can do.
You never feel more alive than when you drain the life force of another animal. Like, I got to tell you.
Oh, what a start for today. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, well, taking us quickly out of here, our first real topic for today. We recently came across an article in Forbes, everyone's favorite fact-based reporting service, whatever. And so basically, a recent article from Forbes gives a list of reasons why everyone should already be investing in 2022's buzzword of the year, the metaverse. So my question for you is, should we invest in the metaverse? Is it the next crypto, or is it the next big bubble?
Baby, this is a bubble. This is a bubble all day. Nobody wants to go in the metaverse.
Okay, so you think it's about, so you wouldn't pay to live next to Snoop Dogg in the metaverse?
I wouldn't pay to do anything with Snoop Dogg that didn't involve marijuana, and that's just a statement.
There could be meta marijuana. You could get high in the metaverse.
Getting meta high to me seems like something like middle schoolers would do, where it's like you smoke like oregano because some like old guy sold it to you, and you're like, I'm so high right now, bro. Bro, are you high right now? Bro, I'm so high right now.
I mean, this conversation just reminds me of, do you guys remember salvia? Like, I feel like kids still do that.
I did salvia.
Yeah, fuck it. I want to invest in salvia, right? Fuck the metaverse. Just give everybody salvia.
Are we not ready? I think that might actually make the metaverse enjoyable. But I don't know. I as somebody that sadly has used VR extensively before, I think it's a miserable place to be until it actually gets better and enjoyable, or this planet becomes uninhabitable. I'll choose to stay in the real world.
Well, Eric? What was your answer? Like,
fuck this. Yeah. I have lots of reasons why I'm against it. I mean, I think to Craig's point, like the fact that it sucks, like this idea that we're investing in a possible future in which virtual reality might actually prove to be a worthwhile escapist endeavor is a big gamble. I mean, we've had VR devices since the 90s, and they're still shit. Like it's it's one area, and it's incredibly hard to do. Like, to be fair, It's an incredibly hard thing to do, but like we haven't really progressed much beyond Second Life, and I think that that's really all that like Zuckerberg is proposing here is a Second Life in which we all have to work, which like I don't really understand like this like merging of like the virtual world where we go to numb our pain from the real world just to have to then participate in the same kinds of
bullshit
labor in that environment, and then also like. Our escapism, I mean, and this has already happened in the way that we use social media, but our escapism is already monetized. So we're constantly generating capital for Zuckerberg's fiefdom, regardless of whether we think that we're on the clock or off the clock, right?
Well,
so like, why am I going to invest in it? I mean, he's already exploiting us every waking moment of the day.
Well, just to like belabor the point of like the question, I guess, and I think that everyone would agree with me in saying that like this is kind of the beauty of the prisoner's dilemma of like the financialization of the economy, is that like I think the question isn't necessarily like is it good or is it cool, but it is like is this going to be like a huge money making endeavor that like it would be worthwhile to like put money into? Like should I put $500 into the metaverse knowing that like it's gonna yield me a big return like early investors in like Facebook or something?
I think the challenge is that we don't actually understand the financial, and I'm interested to hear like Shaye's input on this. We don't actually understand like the financial model that we're living under at this point, because this is like post-capitalism, and we have these like huge entities like Facebook that have like decentralized. Our economy is no longer dependent upon centralized banking, for example. Like, and so I don't think we understand enough about how profit is generated in this new model and how anyone other than Zuckerberg and the like shareholders in the company actually profit off of this kind of stuff.
My prediction, and not to cut Shaye off, but just like my prediction is basically it's going to be like Zuckerberg is going in like behind closed door meetings with like investors, and he's like, imagine an entire new economy. Like, what if we could all start over from scratch? You're naked, you have no clothes, you have no shoes, you have no suits, you have to buy everything all over again. I'm like, that's the metaverse. Like, you start as like this nude avatar, and then like you have to buy a meta suit, and you have to buy meta shoes, and like you got to be in these meetings, but like pretty soon it's like, guys, I appreciate that everyone's got their meta outfits, but I mean, this is a place of work, okay? We can't show up as virtual bears and dolphins and Girl Scout cookies, okay? We're gonna need to wear some meta suits. Like that's what I'm imagining, basically. And like,
I definitely think that you're right on that. And then I think the most interesting aspect of it is, what are we then giving up if we join the metaverse? Which is then we're giving up entire control of our society from the ostensible democracy that most of us live in and everybody in this call lives in now.
You think that we have control now? Is that what I just heard you say?
Yeah. Sadly,
we have already sold ourselves down the river. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. Like, I don't think that we have to live in virtual reality in 20 years necessarily. Like, I think there's some opportunity for reform here, but
I think right now we have significantly more control than we have in the metaverse, which is the like ostensible democracy aspect of it, where we could theoretically organize better. We do have some levers of control here, while the massive corporations still choose for the most part what happened.
But what are we doing with our levers of control?
Yanking on them? I don't know.
All of us have either like iPhones or Androids probably, and are walking around like micro workers selling little bits of data to these, companies, or giving away bits of data to these companies. Like,
then this just gets back
like, we don't even know the scope.
This then just gets back to how hard it is to exist in the modern world and what the point of life is then. Like, is the point to control your own destiny, or is it to have a good time? Because it seems like most people choose to have a good time versus control their own destiny.
So, you know what? I'm gonna jump in here. Love the energy, guys. Great job. But you know what? One of the things I'm noticing you guys talk about is like, so you're talking about the metaverse, and we're talking about Zuckerberg right away. We're like, okay, yeah, Zuckerberg. They changed his name to Meta, but I mean, that to me just seems like branding, optimistic branding. I think it's like the equivalent of like Facebook started in like 96 and they named themselves internet.com. Like, it's not like the metaverse isn't just Facebook. And so this article goes on to give some information about like who is the metaverse. And so he says some really dumb shit that I'll quote for you here. It says, any company building VR, AR technology like Magic Leap, HTC Vive, Varjo is a metaverse company. Any company doing psychedelic research or building biohacking or nootropics products that alter your brain chemistry is a metaverse company. Any company merging these two worlds with digital assets is especially a metaverse company. And when I hear this like this grandiose, all-encompassing idea of the metaverse, I'm realizing like you're talking about everything, which means you're effectively talking about nothing. This is like the 1880s, like the magic elixir that can do it all, you know?
And obviously, like this person's argument is like pro metaverse. I'm assuming
100%.
If they're conflating all of these things. I mean, clearly
I'm sure he's
having
heavily
many
invested.
ontological dilemmas.
Sure.
I do want to be clear. I changed my answer if that is what the metaverse is, because I would like to invest in psychedelic mushrooms. I think we're in for a big mushroom comeback. I like hardcore. I live in Seattle. I'm pretty sure this shit's going to the moon. So put me for 500 on mushrooms.
Honestly, I think you kind of already said it. Like, it's just like, you're just, at that point, you're just lumping shit in. Honestly, yeah. This guy went all in on the metaverse. And he's just trying to convince people to get in so he can fucking dump his shares. He's like, guys, come on in. The water's fine. And then as soon as it goes up, he's going to be like, sell. Oh my fucking God.
Well, what's so interesting too about this is like, you talk about, we're asking like investing in the metaverse, like logistically, like how do you invest in this concept? Frankly, because you can invest in Facebook. Is that investing in the metaverse? I mean, I feel like you're really investing in like WhatsApp and Instagram still. You know what I mean? Like that's where the real business is. So this guy has some answers. So the first thing to do is invest in the infrastructure of the metaverse platforms and ecosystems. Typically. Crypto. Exactly. Yeah. The token economy underlying the ecosystem. And like clearly this dude is probably holding as much crypto as he possibly can. And of course he's saying, you guys should buy it too. You know, because obviously like let's all buy a little more crypto. Let's get that price a little bit higher. And then so I can sell it all and leave you guys holding the bag. But then he goes on and he says like, the second thing you should do is to invest in core NFT assets or like basically accessories, clothing for your virtual avatar, to like Ian's point earlier, like he's like, yeah, like you need, or whoever, like, yeah, you got to make sure you're wearing business appropriate avatar outfits, you know, for whatever. And then the third way is to invest in social tokens, because the social interaction in the metaverse may bring some new social networking apps and create a fans economy. So it'll be an integral part of the development of the metaverse. So I guess this is like meta tokens. And I mean like tokens like on the metaverse. So the ways that he's talking about actually investing in here don't really feel like, I don't know. It just feels like a way to boost crypto. It sounds
like he's inviting everyone to live in Dave & Buster's. It's like the only way, like if you want, the only way to get clothing is like Dave & Buster's bucks. Like if you want to play the games, you need Dave & Buster's bucks. You can only buy the meals with Dave & Buster's bucks. It's like, you just got to keep putting like real money on the fucking Dave & Buster's cards. And then like, you can't spend it anywhere else. Like it's like non-refundable. It's like, oh, I mean, you know, like, sorry, you got to keep spending it. Like, why don't you buy another fucking ape t-shirt? Like,
and I do just think if Dave & Buster's ran the metaverse, again, I would invest in that. You know, as long as it's not Facebook.
So he really goes to show his hand as well. He like later in the article, he says he spells it out like very clearly. He's like, cryptocurrency investors of today are likely to be the masters of the metaverse. The metaverse now has the potential to take The Sims to a whole new level. We are truly creating parallel systems of existence that will change how we live, how we interact with people across the world, and how we do business. So this guy is like, I mean, he's
masters.
Yes, right,
like,
right. You're totally right with the choice. Yeah, no, 100%.
No, he honestly, it sounds like he's just describing Dr. Manhattan. Like I'm gonna go into the metaverse with like every single person that invested in crypto is gonna be like fucking blue and glowing and like hovering in the air with like white eyes, talking about like, I am tired of these people and the way they are living.
No, yeah, it's billionaires who are trying to find other ways to like suck out money. They want to force us into a virtual space where they can bleed us dry there as well. You know, they want to take their virtual wealth and create like a virtual slave situation.
All right, but so I mean, I'll be honest, okay, ethically, morally, it sounds bankrupt, it sounds corrupt. which means it's probably a fantastic business investment. So, like, it sounds like a great pump and dump. I mean, like, I might put some money into it, just like watch what happens. But this is what I was talking about when I was talking about like the prisoner's dilemma of like modern day financialization, right? Where it's like, if you want to be secure in the future, it's like, you can sit out in the hopes that your non-participation will like force companies like this to fucking like cease to exist because no one engages with them. But that's just like not the world we live in. So it's like, I'm kind of like, by virtue of like, okay, I have to fucking play this awful fucking game or starve. Like, those are my options. It's like, all right, well, like, fuck, do I put a little bit in and like just like frantically watch it, like bite my nails and like, oh, I hope more suckers get this. Like, it's a worthy investment. Maybe not, do you invest? Is it a worthwhile investment? Like, do you pump and dump? Like, what do you guys think?
No, I mean, there's so much risk. Like, they're like the only arguments that we have for it are from these like goober edgelords who hope that they're going to get rich and have absolutely like no model to like present to buttress their argument that it's even possible, or sustainable. Not to say that like our standard like capitalist model that we like grew up with is like functional, but like I can at least explain it.
Yeah, there's no argument. Nobody's asking for this. Who's out here saying, I want the metaverse? Zuck just said it to us when...
There are people who are like, dude, I am so ready to leave this world that has done me so wrong. Grimes, Grimes no, but like I know people who are just like fucking dying. They're like, you know what? Like, I'm a fucking loser in this world. I love my fucking Oculus. Like, if I could live in there, if I could get VR, I want my VR blowjobs to fucking blow my mind. Like, that's the world some people want. People want to upload their consciousness Ian and I were talking beforehand, where they can put their consciousness into like an 8-foot tall gorilla with like a 10-foot dick, and like fuck planets, whatever.
I just
fuck planet.
Yeah, again, like, why the fuck not? Like
more fucking power to them. Just leave me the fuck out of this. Well, I do not care.
So you don't want to get rich off of those people who are trying to fuck planets in their gorilla avatars.
What if you're exploiting them? That isn't okay.
I got bad news. I got real bad news. I got born lucky. I ain't rich. I ain't poor. But I don't need to go exploit fucking anybody. I'm happy with my life. I'm gonna go have a barbecue this summer, and I'll just call that good. We'll use the real sun. Not all right. Well,
Craig, your feel good story is bumming me out. So next story. All right. Okay. Ectogenesis. So, once we all live in the metaverse, physical touch will be a thing of the past, and we'll all be too busy playing Crash Bandicoot 19 to be able to make sex. So, where will babies come from? Well, according to a recent video essay by the BBC, ectogenesis is almost here, and some people, and by some people, I mean mostly men, aren't fucking happy about it. So, my question to you is this. Is it inhumane to make lab-grown humans?
What does that question even mean? That wasn't the angle I was expecting you to take. Is it inhumane? I mean, that's.
I think it sounds great. I don't know. Am I crazy here, Eric? Why not?
Yeah, I'll be honest. If I wasn't forced into a binary, I would say I don't really fucking care. I think it's interesting, like for the purposes of having like ethical arguments, impotent ethical arguments, but like. The only leg I have to stand on in terms of why I would oppose it if forced to choose a position would be that I think that we have lived for so long outside of the natural like balance of the world without considering the consequences of our technologies. And I think this is just another area in which there will be unintended consequences that we cannot yet conceive of, that we won't have the ability to walk back. And I don't mean like creating soulless humans or, like raising some new breed of animal to eat or something. I just mean like, I don't know, think about the impact of invasive species that were brought to the United States by colonists. Like, they're we have no idea. Like, we have no idea what in 300 years the like result. Well, that's assuming that we don't all asphyxiate to death before then, but that's my angle.
And, Eric, it's interesting that you bring up like the natural thing, because to your point, we have lived outside of like a natural order for such a long time. And when I kind of took to the internet because I was really curious as to like how people felt about this generally. And like, no one was like, surprisingly, like no one was really gung ho about this. There were plenty of women who cited like not being able to have children or having like, phobias of birth, or I mean, like generally women were usually pretty okay with this idea, especially women with like, like medical histories, or I imagine like trans women would like be gung ho about this as well. But like for men, this was like a step too far. Like every dude was like, this is unnatural. Like this is like Brave New World meets 1984. Like it was like pure dystopia to them.
Sure, because like they have to render control over everyone else's body, and this would disembody that fight like even further. Like, what do you do with that? Like, how do you even oppose it like in a way that makes sense? You've got to change your entire argument.
Yeah, it's weird because like I think the general consensus seemed to have been like to just hate this idea innately, and like I get the sense that people have like an arbitrary limit like on what constitutes a violation of nature. And it's like weird that for like, I think for most people who read this article or like did research on it, like this was the limit, like the Ziploc bag baby. And I actually like looked up pictures of this, and it's not like the Matrix. Like you're not like in a cool bubble with like full of goo. Like you're literally like, it's like, honestly, it's like you're in a Ziploc bag with a tube running into it that like pumps you full of nutrients. Like it's pretty intense. So,
my concern comes more from like, we already know, so, we've only identified like a small fraction of the microbiome, but we know that when children are born through C-section rather than vaginal birth, that there's actually like serious consequences in terms of the development of their microbiome and the sort of transplantation of bacteria from the mother's body to the baby's body. Now, I certainly understand the argument for medical intervention in the case of like a breech pregnancy or whatever, and to, use the technology that we have to do a C-section. Now that we're aware of the microbiome impacts, and which are huge, because we're in the process of a mass extinction in terms of microbiota because of agriculture, antibiotics, like a whole host of things. We can kind of combat that, but I just think about how long it took the medical community to even be aware of that as a problem that triggered medical issues for people decades after birth. I mean, it's taken us many, many years to even be aware of the implications.
I really like Eric's point here. I just actually disagree with it from the other side, is that I think she's entirely right, that there's tons of stuff that we're not going to know and will be unable to see. But as somebody that does believe in the march of progress is the only way for humanity to save itself, that moving forward, this would be a good thing to continue to study. And while it might cause problems in the short term, hopefully it would lead to a greater understanding in the long term.
I think the problem that you're describing of like the microbiome, I'm pretty sure like in a couple years, the scientists will realize that all they have to do is throw in some raw yogurt into the Ziploc bag, and that shit will just figure itself out, So I'm not like super concerned. I feel like that's just like another step you just got to figure out. It's just like, we'll just do the science to the thing, and then the science will keep going. That's like really what I feel like we'll get there.
I don't think so. I think you're wrong. No, I think you're really wrong, and I think that mindset is part of what's gotten us into the position that we're in currently.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Well, okay, so something that was interesting about this is that like this has been kind of like a buzz among what do they call them, bioethicists. Like they're very much like raising flags and raising alarms, and they're like, all right, like there is such a beyond even Eric what you were mentioning, just like the biological factors and the biological consequences of like, what happens if you just grow a baby like outside of a human? Not to say something of like the emotional psychological connection. Like I already think about how easy it is for men to like walk away from a child and be like, not my problem, peace. And then like again, like if and this feels weird. Like this next sentence is going to feel sexist, but it's just like a thought that came into my head, and I'm sure that's a product of like being reared in a patriarchal society. But like, not even like if women too are also able to like not have that physical relationship with the child growing inside of them, if like we're going to be like that much more detached from like a segment of the population that maybe come to known as like the bag babies.
Well, this already happens with
adoption. Like,
I forgot about adoption.
Well, not even that, but you can have what's the word? Where you have someone else carry the baby to term for you. Surrogacy. Yeah, exactly. That already exists, and like
I mean, the concept is pretty radical. Like, and I would consider myself like a fairly radical leftist, and like as such, like I am thrilled about the idea of like bodily autonomy and like being able to. Same. Yeah, like I mean, that's super cool. I just also think it's like super problematic, and that we have like other really fundamental problems to solve that are going to like kill the planet and not just us. Which is why I push back on this notion of that progress is what allows human beings to persist, because we're the ones that are ruining everything. And as much as I love being alive and being a human, and I think it's a cool experience, also like we're fuckers. Like we don't really deserve to like continue to inhabit the earth. And so like all of these interventions in which we're causing mass extinction on both like a bacterial and a fauna level, like. But
then on that, so just let me ask you this then. And this is purely out of curiosity, because again, I agree with most of that. If we stopped innovating right now, do you think society would die? Most humans. How
do you define innovation, I guess, would be the question. Like
Ziploc bag babies.
Yeah. I guess that's true, but I just think you don't get to innovate in some areas and not innovate in others. You kind of just move forward with progress and let the scientists kind of do weird and crazy things. Now, bioethics, I think that's something where we could have a discussion about whether or not this is sane. But I mean, immediately to me, the thought just goes in, they're going to make war babies that are going to kill us all.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, they'll just do that with robots anyways. So who cares? It's probably easier to kill war babies than war robots.
All right. Well, Craig, I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to kind of go over some of the, I guess, like bioethical dilemmas that were like proposed by some of these bioethicists in the article that I read. So as science barrels towards this possible biomedical inevitability, some bioethicists, in an article in Medical Technology, voiced their concern over some of these new moral/ethical dilemmas. Okay, so this, I'm sure you can anticipate what the first one is. Anybody want any guesses?
Abortion. Abortion.
Why am I cheering that? All right.
Why not?
Why am I not cheering it? Yeah, abortion.
Hold on. I just want to take a guess here. So wait, are people afraid that we're going to make bag babies and then abort them for the fun of it?
Probably. I think there are definitely more than a handful of legislators that are terrified of that right now.
Well, listen to this. Okay, so the legal abortion limit in the UK was brought down from 28 weeks to 24 in 1990 because advances in neonatal care meant fetuses born in this window had become more likely to live. So their concern is if artificial wombs are able to help even smaller babies survive, this could mean the legal limit on natal abortions is cut yet again. And I mean, like, I feel like this invention would make it so that, okay, you can remove the baby from your body, but you do have to put it in the bag. And then what do you do with it? Like, I think the US military just adopts it, or maybe they sell it to China or something. But I know, I'm serious though. Like, because here's the thing, like Eric was kind of alluding to earlier, like, we don't deserve the earth. I mean, I don't know, speak for yourself, Eric. I fucking rule. But to her point, like, we haven't fixed any of the structural problems that have led to things like declining birth rates. Like, our generation is like, dude, fuck this. Like, I can't afford a fucking child. So it's like governments are unwilling to do anything to stand up to these, like, transnational corporations that basically make the fucking world go round. So I think to them, any kind of scientific medical breakthrough where like they can up the human population and they're like, yay, more consumers, or like just again, like give it to the fucking military to like train to be a soldier for its whole life, like it's goddamn Master Chief. I think that could happen.
Dude, there's no way they're going to take responsibility for that child. They're going to force parents, mothers in most cases, to take responsibility, to pay the companies, to pay for childcare, to continue being the consumer that you're talking about, just to have some more economic activity. Like, it's an economic choice, at a certain level, where they just want more blood in people, little blood bags moving around, moving money for them.
So here was another proposition by these, and I feel like you can kind of see which end of the political spectrum they're on too with the questions they're posing. One was, if a fetus is viable outside of a person's womb inside of an artificial one, then does that fetus's right to life, which is like, there's the loaded language, the fetus's right to life, trump that of a pregnant person's right not to become a parent? So it's like the idea that, well, we have the technology to save it. Like, I think it's fucked up to get rid of it now. My
biggest fear, though, like the fear of being forced to have a child is one of my biggest fears, like as a cis woman, is how incredibly complex and nuanced this issue is. And the fact that as soon as it moves into the regulatory sphere, we have to trust people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to make decisions for us in this space. And so part of me looks to science and says, motherfuckers, like, please, you have like professionalized in this space. Don't take us down this road where where like these batshit representatives get to make this decision for us, because it's real fucking complicated. We're four reasonably bright adults, and we're all just kind of like, I don't know, like, seems cool, but problematic. Like, glad I don't have to make a decision about, like.
I think it's interesting that you bring up Marjorie Taylor Greene, because I see her being super against this. And I think that I can already imagine like the culture war between like the bag baby people and like the natural birth people. And one of the dilemmas that like the ectogenesis bioethicists bring up is this idea of class, that if this becomes normalized, say like, I mean, granted, maybe in the far future, like far future, like maybe 50 years in the future, like modern, like middle class, lower, end of the socioeconomic spectrum, like working women will have to have bag babies so they can continue working. And then like people who can afford to have like a natural birth, which, as you mentioned with the vaginal canal birth thing, like might end up having babies that are like have better immune systems, that are healthier. Like, I don't know, maybe they're just sexier looking. Who knows? Maybe we can tell who's a bag baby
more
and
like emotion, like able to emotionally like adapt and form attachment. Like, we have no idea. But I think that the class implication is really serious. And I think that like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like, who knows? It only takes like one lobbyist with deep pockets, right, to change somebody's fundamental opinion on something like this. But I think it's the like secondary and tertiary kind of effects of if enough people stand behind it, if enough money is behind moving forward with it, that it doesn't get completely regulated out. But then we do things like put greater regulation around abortion and force, I think it was Shaye's point, like people in lower socioeconomic demographics to have children when they would maybe not choose to otherwise. I think that's what we have to really worry about, because access to this is going to be extremely limited for a long time, right? Like the end count of the humans like implicated here is going to be probably pretty small.
I would assume that we would use this to force more women to have babies. But the one thing that we need to also think about right now is the radical forced birth groups already have that rationale. So there's not really, I mean, to them, a zygote is already a child, is already a person. So once they've had that, they don't need any more rationale. The one thing I do disagree with is I do think that you will be having rich people having bag babies before you have poor people. You will force poor women to endure work with pregnancy, work after having a child before we will give them any technological benefits.
I think you're absolutely right about all of that.
And I think it's going to be like a new Habsburg dynasty situation, right? Where it's like the first couple bag babies, like something's not right with your bag baby. All right. So, but I really quick, like Craig brings up an interesting point. Again, so points to Craig. Craig and Eric are now tied. I'm keeping track. No. So one of the potentially other positive benefits of this was like ectogenesis could also render the controversial practice of commercial surrogacy obsolete. Financially and socially vulnerable women can become targets for commercial surrogacy, and there have been reports of surrogate mothers being treated poorly by surrogacy agencies. If artificial uteruses become an option, even if only for those with the means to pay, then the demand for surrogacy could dry up, freeing vulnerable people from potential exploitation. And on the one hand, I think this is good, but then on the other hand, it's like, all right, well, what are we going to do to help these women who could at least use this option to like make some money?
You're already seeing that all the time in rich people circles, celebrities that we know. I don't know that many rich people, so I'm sure they're doing it. My only example is rich celebrities that are in the gossip magazines. They're already using surrogates to do this. I don't see them giving it up to have a bag baby just because of the connotations. And I think Eric has a good point that we don't know what kind of children this will produce to not having been grown next to a mother for your entire fetus stage. So I just think I honestly think, it would be maybe more of a middle class thing than an upper class.
I think what'll happen is bag babies will be the newest hip thing. They'll be like Brangelinas having like one adopted kid of every color. It'll be like little different colored Ziploc baggies you can carry around on a belt as they gestate for however long. But so that's my prediction for.
Were we worried about that with IVF? I can remember my brother joking. I don't know, maybe being verbally abusive, like in siblings might be like, well, you're adopted. My brother would be like, well, you're a test tube baby. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we've gotten to the point where like fertility treatment is pretty normalized. So will there be a stigma?
It might take the heat off the traditional white-black racism, and then we'll have like non-GMO baby versus like bag baby or something like that. Like that'll be the prejudice of the new age. Like
we'll have to make sure that the bags that they're grown in don't have like PFAS or forever chemicals, BPA-free bag babies.
Right. Enough of the potential future trends that may emerge from bag babies. There is a current trend happening here that I just learned about. Maybe you guys knew about this beforehand, but warcore, the new fashion trend gaining popularity in the TikTokosphere. It's straddled somewhere between school shooter chic and guerrilla fighter glamour. Some of the staples of this style include faux bulletproof vests, tactical cargo pants, and exactly one color option, black. So my question to you, is this political fashion or is this attention-seeking shock factor?
Y'all didn't know. When you invited me on today, I fucking love fashion. This shit is dope as hell. I'm true? I think it's
Can't
great.
You tell? Look at him. Look at him.
I'm wearing a raggedy old.
I'm not so sure about this.
Raggedy old hoodie and this hat that my mom bought me. Shout out to my mom for this hat. I love it. But
who we learned last time is also Craig's therapist.
Look, I think fashion is not that complicated. Let's let people fucking dress how they want. That being said, fuck this, man. Fuck this.
So you think
I think it's ugly as hell. I think they should be able to do it, but I think it's ugly as hell, and it's promoting this dumbass violence.
So wait, do you think it's political fashion or no? Do you think it's political?
Yeah, I guess. Sure.
Do you think it's political do you think the people who I was going to give away my stance and say who perpetrate this aesthetic on like mainstream culture, that it's political for them or in the interpretation, it can't help but be political or both.
My thought, I'm asking if it's political for you see a person walking down the street, an average person, maybe a low tier Instagram influencer. Like for them, do you think they're being political?
No, I think they're just dressing because they think it's cool. But the amorphous powers that promote this and organize this, it does create that societal acceptance of military gear and the fetishization of it. If somebody could say that word for me, that'd be helpful. That makes it so we do, as a society, love the wars, love the military, love bulletproof vests.
Shaye and I were talking earlier, and I think for me, it what's the word I'm looking for? Like normalizes struggle for the sake of struggle. It's like it creates this kind of mentality of like, oh, like the struggle is ongoing. We're always in the streets fighting, but like there's no objective other than like that. It's cool. It's like a signifier, right? It's just like it's kind of like a fashion shibboleth where it's just like okay, like the fucking far right, like they wear their camo and like they're in Walmart. I'm like, ooh, I see you. And then they're like the other ones are like, fucking like walking by, they're like in Starbucks in all black, like ready for a fucking tear canister grenade to come through the window. So it's like, I think it just kind of like obfuscates like what the point of it would even be. And it just turns it into like a signifier.
It's different classes doing the same thing, right? When somebody in Alabama wears camo, sorry to the people of Alabama, but when a far right person,
but that's tactical. That's not warcore.
You say tactical because
that is true. That is true. That is tactical. Great word. I hope, is that a real word? I love it. And when somebody does that, it normalizes the military in our everyday lives. And when a influencer in Southern California wears warcore, it still normalizes the military in everyday lives. It's just doing it in a different way.
Well, I'm curious if you think it normalizes military or militia type ideas, because like there's part of me that thinks, okay, if we can get a bunch of like left-leaning fashionistas to be slightly more okay with the idea of arming themselves maybe against I just don't think it's cool that only the right gets to play with guns and hate a fascist government I want the left to be just as cool, being like, you know what, if Donald Trump fucking won, he would have not only the US Army, he'd also have the fucking Proud Boy militias like at his call. Like, I want the fucking Socialist Rifle Organization to have like a bunch of fucking TikTokers who are like, no, dude, I have a legit bulletproof vest, fucking gas mask, and my AR. I'm ready to go take down the real fascists, and like I'm wondering if this, I don't think it does, but I would love to imagine somehow that this allows people, like this is like the gateway drug to being like, do I like being anti-fascist? Like, is this cool? Like, check, I look so fucking cool in my bulletproof vest. Like,
I love how Shaye earlier was like, is it problematic that we're normalizing this? And he's like, I think we should all get bulletproof vests.
Yeah, I want to voice my opinion here. I am against.
Boo.
I just put that on the record.
Lame. Thought you were cool,
Sorry.
Craig.
I think you're on a watch list somewhere.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. We're trying to get our view count up. We figured. I don't know. All right. So for any listeners who aren't familiar with exactly how warcore defines itself, we went straight to the source, techwearoutfits.com. There's even a hyphen in it, which means they're a legitimate website. They define warcore as the rise of military tactical equipment in fashion. In a growing quest to bring functionality to clothing, warcore retains the codes of techwear with technical materials and functional garments, taking military design to the extreme.
Is that an oxymoron?
Which part?
Taking military design to the extreme. And then I do want to pass it off to Eric because I feel like I've cut her off like 3 times now.
I think it's like less self-aware than that. Like, I think that I understand that based on that summary, it's under the auspices of utility. But I get the impression that the dystopian fantasy that fuels this fashion trend is only possible because the people who are engaging with it don't realize that we're already fucking living in a dystopia. Mm-hmm. Just because it doesn't yet look everywhere like Neil Stephenson, or I know that like that our aesthetic for dystopia, wasteland, like that, that kind of thing, like Mad Max, like all reaches back to like the 60s. And so it's like pretty well established. Like I think that there's like a lack of awareness of the fact that like we're already there. Like we're already on like the brink of ruin. Like,
Eric, we're not even close. I feel like there's still food and water. I think we could go so much lower.
I feel like it's just it's engaging with a fantasy of like an end of the world that's much more on the nose. You know what I mean? Like we're waiting to like cross this threshold where where there's desertification everywhere and we're fighting over water and we need our bulletproof vests and whatever, and it's like that's cool.
That is
but
the
like
male fantasy, right? Is that we get back to actually, instead of podcasting and sitting at my desk all day, I get to go out and search for water and hunt again. I mean, I don't want that, but I assume many other people do. I agree with you that we're in a dystopian place. And people should realize that, but that, I just think we could go so much lower.
And I think we will. I just think it'll be really rapid. And I don't think anybody will be thinking about fashion like as it happens. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the like fantasy part. But I also want to say that like I can't rag on this like exclusively. As a former goth kid, what I will say, I do have to stand up for them on the principle of that. While it may make people uncomfortable, and that may or may not be part of the thrill of dressing this way, I think it's probably all over the map. I do have to sort of stand for their right to do it, but also I think that there's probably an element of empowerment. Like for me personally, as a like teenage woman, dressing in a normative fashion in the late 90s did not bring with it a feeling of bodily security necessarily. Whereas, transitioning to wearing trench coats and 20-eyed Doc Martens might have been polarizing at times, but it also did give me a feeling of strength and protection. And so I do think that there's probably a good physical empowerment argument here that should be respected, even though I think it looks dumb and I'm old enough at this point that I'm not worried about sounding old by like saying that it's ridiculous. I know I'm old, like it's fine. I can live with that. Like aesthetically, I think it's terrible, but I think on some level I can understand it.
And this is why I started with, as a fashion lover, let the kids dress how they fucking want. I might think it's dumb as hell, although I'm on the site that Shaye recommended. I want to buy some of this shit. I mean, I know I couldn't pull it off and fuck most of the warcore bullshit on there, but there's a couple that are like, hey,
right?
I think that looks good, man.
Dude, it's interesting because so one of the articles, there was like a Vice article about it, and they interview this woman who lives in Chicago, and she says, she's like, when I wear like I'm paraphrasing, when I wear like day clothes, I go out and I get all these inappropriate comments about how I'm dressed or whatever. But she's like, when I wear a bulletproof vest carrying around a fucking katana, no one fucks with me. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm like, I get that. I can totally get the sense of you're just like, hey, I feel pretty safe right now. People are fucking terrified of me. Like I get there's like an aspect of that. And there's
I also feel like that's like a breach of the social contract. Like I'm on the subway, I'm like scrolling, my phone or whatever, and then I look up and like 3 teenagers with fucking samurai swords get on the train. I'm like, fuck, I'm getting off on the next stop. Fuck this.
I feel the same way when people aren't wearing masks on the subway, frankly. I'm like, oh, you fucking asshole. Like, God damn it. But, but to one of the points Eric mentioned, it does seem like people, like, this is like for the goth aspect. Like, I feel like in the when I don't know. When I was in high school, dressing goth was cool, and I remember it felt counterculture. You were rebelling against something. Like you were seeing something on the wall. You're like,
you didn't know what, but you were against it.
You didn't know exactly what, right? But I feel like it was like whatever was normal, you didn't like that. And I feel like what we see now, like with warcore, it's a rebellion in the same sense, but it's like a prepared rebellion. Prepared rebellion, where you see you're seeing the writing on the wall and you're reacting like one of the people, so kids wear this in fucking school, which I find terrifying. There's this guy, Tyler, he's a TikToker.
But that's what somebody would have said about us in our trench coats. And then me in the 90s, you in the aughts. But yeah, I mean, like when I was scanning the internet for just recent articles, it really, like it smelled, looked, and tasted the same. Like it felt like, middle-class white parents who were terrified of their kids worshiping the devil.
Sure. Well, I feel like it's a lot more reasonable to be afraid of your kid going in and shooting people than it is to be afraid of them worshiping the devil or like getting shot by someone else who thinks that they are a shooter or something. I don't know.
I'm just picturing that mom like, sweetie, are you gonna leave your katana at home today?
All right. So before we move on, after having this conversation, Craig, Eric, warcore, good or bad?
All fashion is good.
I unfortunately I have to say good. I would be a hypocrite if I didn't. It's hard. It's really, really hard to take that stance.
I love that we can hear it in your voice, how hard that is for you. It's just like, oh no.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me.
I just want to know, like, taking military design, like, what's more extreme than the clothes you wear to kill someone? Like grave digging? Like, what is the beyond?
I mean, that was the thing about like the goth argument, though, too, was like, there was this like veneration of of death and morbidity, and like it didn't make a lot of sense either, you know. Like it also had like a weird bleakness to it that it seemed even at the time to be like a bit risque to romanticize.
Right.
But I think like with all aspects of visual culture, it's a mixed bag, even, you know, both for like the person who's like creating the look and wearing it, and for the person who's receiving it. And I think that tension is what makes it interesting. And I think it's a good thing that we aren't sure how we feel about it. Like, I think that that's just a sign that we're alive and we live in complex times and we're being thoughtful.
I actually think Eric is making my point for why I believe we should experiment with bag babies under the guise of fashion, of just, we got to do something. I guess let's fucking go.
All right. Well, in case you hadn't already surmised, the theme of today's episode is dystopia. Now that we live there, you're probably wondering, what are we going to eat? There's no food. There's no water. Well, the answers, according to some pundits, is bugs. So my question to you is this. Is eating bugs, as it's now being presented, a fun new trend that will catch on of its own volition? Or is this manufactured consent designed to prime us for the fact that, like it or not, we're all going to be eating cockroaches soon?
I think you need to give us some context.
That's a complex binary.
Okay. All right, let me dumb it down. All right, let me dumb it down. Okay, like, all right. So articles are starting to come out saying, like, I think it's time to start eating bugs. Eat bugs to save the planet. If you're eco-conscious, you're gonna chomp down on some fucking grasshoppers. So, like, is eating bugs, is this something that's gonna catch on because it's cool and hip? Or are they just trying to prime us for the fact that, all right, chumps, enjoy your steak while you can, because within the next couple of years, you'll all be eating bugs for dinner?
I don't think it's going to be the next couple of years, based on like being a vegan 15 or 20 years ago now, and how long it took for people to be willing to buy a Beyond Burger, which my position has completely reversed on in the last, several years. But I don't know that we have to worry about tomorrow being able to buy grasshoppers at Publix.
A couple of years ago, they put grasshoppers in the Seattle Mariners baseball stadium, and they went crazy. People loved eating them, just like the salted grasshoppers. It was mostly a joke, haha, we're doing this, but they were tasty. So as somebody that's ate bugs before, I get the, like, it's not that gross to do it once you're actually doing it, but there's no fucking way we're getting a bunch of people to eat bugs. If you're gonna grind them up and turn them into something else, maybe. I think we're going to have lab-grown meat before that.
Eric, I think that, like, I thought of you when I was thinking about this earlier today. I was thinking of Baudrillard, and I was thinking of Simulacra and Simulacrum. Or anyway. And I was just thinking about... Okay. No, I'm going to make it... But, like, no, like, I was just thinking about... So, like, here's why I would just have, like, bad, like, vibes from it, okay? Because, like, I think that the way that it's being propositioned, like, I watched a video on, like, the New York Times, and I'll go over some of the points, but basically they were saying, like, a growing number of chefs, researchers, and entrepreneurs, and they always have our best interests at heart, right, are working toward a common goal, getting us to eat more bugs. Here's my concern about this. Here's what I think is coming. I think that they're eventually going to have the bug lobby, okay? And they're going to be going to Congress, and they're going to be like, look, we've got bugs for sale, all right? We need bugs in bellies. And I think what's going to happen is, and I don't know if you guys think I'm going, like, too far off, or if I'm going to hit the nail on the head. I think that we're going to see, like, crushed up bug powder, like, formed into, like, chicken nuggets, and, like, that's going to be the new meat for, like, kids in inner city schools. They're gonna get a contract for, like, public schools, and then, like, the poorest kids in the country are gonna be like, they're the ones that have to eat the bugs. And I was thinking of, like, the object no longer resembles itself. It is now, like, a pure simulacra, and, like, the kids are gonna get, like, it's gonna say, like, bug chicken sandwich, and it's just bugs in the shape of a chicken sandwich, and that's what we're gonna start feeding to poor kids. Like, this is why I get, like, bad vibes from this.
So I actually agree with you on that. I just also think that might be the most nutritious meal that we've served in a public school in America in a long time.
At least they won't be riddled with hormones. Yeah. I don't know, man. I honestly, like, I'm super down for the eating bug revolution. Like, I have, like, zero qualms with it. Like, I watched the same video, and watching that chef put fucking grasshoppers on a taco, I was like, damn, I am fucking hungry, man. I was ready. I am ready, you know? So I don't know. I see your fear. I like the fear you're describing where they grind up grasshoppers. They already grind up like chicken bones and intestine and shit like that. Like, I'm not really that much worried about it being like a less emotionally intelligent animal that we're grinding up into paste now to feed people. Like, that actually doesn't bother me, other than like ew, a cockroach, you know? Like, I wouldn't eat the fucking cockroach on the floor because I know it's been walking.
I just think we're gonna have lab-grown meat before this, and it's gonna be a moot point. But I actually am curious, Eric, you're a vegan. I'm not
anymore. I am no longer. I was for many years. For more than a decade.
Obviously, you couldn't eat bugs as a vegan, but they might. I don't know.
I'm a vegetarian. I have no issues eating bugs. Just saying, straight up.
Hypocrite.
I don't speak for anyone else. I'm just saying, I have no fucking problem. Like, there's like a threshold of sentience or like assumed emotional capability that I'm like, the bugs fall beneath it.
After my octopus teacher, like, I can't use that like sort of like sliding sentience like argument anymore, because I'm just like, we don't fucking know. We have no idea.
You need my cockroach teacher.
I mean, maybe.
Franz Kafka would like to have a word with you, Shaye. Okay.
She saw the fly once and she's like, I'm not doing that.
I'm just not sure if it's like a distraction from our disordered food production economy and artificial, which is like an artificial sort of economy, that keeps us from dealing with some of the fundamental problems in our like food production and food supply. Or if it is like a really thoughtful, outside of the box, like compromise or solution. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I feel like anytime we like the whole Beyond Meat thing, I struggle with, because like when I was a vegan, a big part of my argument was at the time I was working in animal welfare. And so I was trying to convince people to stop killing dogs and cats, but was going and eating chickens and cows and fish and whatever else. And that felt really inconsistent. Yeah. However, the alternatives, when you remove meat from the diet, mean that you no longer have regenerative agriculture because animals are like a part of that. Like the whole model of food production like has to shift. And honestly, eating nothing but plants, you can eat very, very small amounts of animal products, I think, and have like well-rounded nutrition. But the kinds of plants that we eat in our monoculture, in our like hugely mechanized monoculture, are not actually healthy, right? Like all of the grains and legumes and carbs, and like that's why it's such a high percentage of people are pre-diabetic in the United States, because like all of these processed foods are like hinging on these like sugar, rich ingredients. And so, I think that like the bug argument makes the bug as like a nutritional staple is compelling. But I feel like it also takes away from the conversation about how we maybe need to address food production on a larger scale.
So, I mean, to kind of take your point and like Shay's point about like, oh, you're already eating like ground up chicken bones. Like the thing that like makes me suspicious is that like this framing of it is like, it's a rational consumer choice. And like, I can already see the culture war coming. Like there's already like the meat eating conservative trend, like, with a fork and knife in front of a big steak, like, try and take it from me, lib shits. So it's just like, I'm like picturing like, go fuck yourself and eat your bugs, you fucking nerds. But when I was reading the article, it's like, the way they frame this is like the fault of like the middle class. I was like, all right, shut the fuck up. So let me just like read this. Let me read this to you. And like, let me just kind of give you my 2 cents. And then I want to hear yours. It's like, this is from the video. Here's the problem. And that's how they frame it. Here's the problem. And then the next word is a growing middle class. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. So here's the problem. A growing middle class around the world is driving up the demand for meat, milk, and eggs. And that will mean more livestock farming, leading to more deforestation and other environmental harm, and an increase in greenhouse gas emissions. Quote one of the featured entrepreneurs, not the scientists, not the bug farmers. The paradox today is that our population is growing, both in population and in appetite. Like every fucking baby that's coming out is going, Mom, give me steak. At the same time, it is shrinking in critical resources required to grow food. And unless this paradox is resolved, we are heading on a very concerning collision course. And I feel like the thing that like drove me crazy is like, I don't think the problem, it's not that it's like agriculture per se, but like they frame it as like this maintenance of the status quo. Like instead of like resourcing the way that we like house people and like, you know, like build fucking suburbs and like like a castle unto each individual person, it's like the only way to continue to like fucking do suburban sprawl and just like completely like overtake far more than we need is to grind up bugs and eat them. And it's all your fault because we have a growing middle class. So fuck you, eat your bugs. And like, that's the thing that drove me crazy. Like, what are you guys, where do you stand on that?
I mean, now you're just doing a critical critique of a capitalist media source that's trying to sell you something when the problem is real.
They're just trying to analyze me, Craig.
They're just
Answer
trying
the
to-
bug question.
We should be eating bugs. It's obvious. It's a great source of protein, nutrition. I'm just not going to fucking do it. I'm not going to start. Look, I'd rather ride this fucking planet. I don't know. Give me a Beyond Burger. I like those. But I go to Starbucks and I order that impossible breakfast sandwich sometimes if I'm feeling a little naughty. And it's kind of nice. I'm just not eating a fucking bug.
Ian, it's a cultural thing. People in some cultures eating bugs is like revered. It's a delicacy. Like we think it's gross.
Name them.
I don't fucking know. But we think it's gross, but like who fucking cares? Like you'll get over it. You'll get over it quick, and then all of a sudden you'll have yummy, tasty, little salted crickets, and you'll be like, ah, this is delicious. And then no one will fucking care. No one will fucking care.
Okay, Craig and Shay, shut the fuck up. Eric, before we go, we have time for one more opinion. What is yours? You're gonna take us out of here today.
Oh man, so this is the yes or no. Bugs or no bugs? Bugs are going to save the world or not save the world?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm fucking fine with it.
All right, well, you heard it here first, folks. She's fucking fine with it. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Camp Re-Education, and we'll see you next time.